08. This is Common Sense Matters, and I'm here with my guest, Anna Stapleton. You might guess that we are related. I'm Helen Stapleton. This is my daughter, Anna, and we're going to be talking about MAHA, M-A-H-A. It's a slogan that you see a lot. It means Make America Healthy Again. And this is part of why Donald Trump got elected president. He made all sorts of promises about cleaning up the toxins in our food and cleaning up the environment and all the things that contribute to bad health. And I believe that a lot of these promises have been broken. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. But before we get into the topic of MAHA and its broken promises, I just wanted to make a few quick announcements. Our state senator, Janice Bowling, is going to be on a listening tour on Wednesday, August 13th at 1 o'clock at the Franklin County Annex. I admire the fact that she actually goes out into the community and holds free events and wants to hear from her constituents. Our U.S. Rep, Scott Desjardins, does not do that. He will hold a telephone town hall, and he will come to events where people have to buy expensive tickets, but he doesn't do just open town halls. So you got to admire that. So that's August 13th at 1 o'clock at the Annex, small meeting room. On Sunday, August 17th, we're having dinner with Dems, and that's at Shenanigans. The Franklin County Democratic Party invites you to come. We'll get the first round of pizza. The rest is on you. So that's Sunday, August 17th at 6 o'clock. On Saturday, August 23rd, from 9 in the morning until 11, we are going to be having a demonstration across the street from the Franklin County Board of Education. We're not protesting the Board of Education. We're protesting Scott Desjardins and his lockstep support of the Trump administration. And then on Tuesday, August 26th at 6 o'clock at the Annex, we're having our monthly meeting in the small meeting room at the Annex. So again, that's Tuesday, August 26th. So we hope to see you at any of these events. You can also look them up at our website, which is Franklin County, Tennessee Democratic Party.com. Long word, but anyway, Franklin County, Tennessee Democratic Party.com. All right. So my guest is my daughter, Anna Stapleton, and she has a degree in public health from Roanoke College. Both of my daughters I consider them my doctors. Whenever I have something wrong with me, I call up or I text my daughters, and they usually tell me what to do. They research this stuff like crazy. But both of these little girls loved junk food when they were little. And now they are the most health-conscious eaters you'd ever seen. So, Anna, how did you go from Taco Bell to the way you eat today?
Well, I'll start out by saying I still love Taco Bell, and occasionally I will swing by the one next to Kroger and grab something, but I'd say it's been a slow process. I didn't go from eating ultra-processed food to eating, local organic food most of the time overnight. I think for most people, it's a slow process where you are slowly learning about ingredients and what they are and what they do to you. And I would say it took probably 4 to 6 years to really make that transition into eating healthy and just making that a part of my lifestyle.
Mm-hmm. And how did getting melanoma? So Anna had melanoma a few years ago, and how did that lead you on your journey?
I was diagnosed with melanoma when I was 23, which is a serious type of skin cancer. I had a 3-month-old baby at the time, and so it was very jarring. And it sort of, it was a blessing and a curse, obviously. I mean, luckily it was just stage 1. I ended up getting it 2 more times, but it sort of was a blessing in that it gave me the perspective at a younger age at how important your health is and how it's really all that you have. And I think a lot of people don't have a big health scare like that until they're in, maybe midlife, or maybe they're in their 60s or 70s when they realize, like, oh, my health is something that's really important and I need to take care of it. But for me, I was a young mom, I was a young woman, and so I got to have that sort of epiphany earlier on. And I think a lot of people in this country get diagnosed with serious health issues. And I think that's sort of what's inspired the energy behind MAHA is we're seeing a rise in chronic health issues in this country, especially in younger people and in children. So my experience wasn't an isolated incident. There's other young people that have serious health issues. There's been a stark increase in chronic health issues in children, which might be the most disturbing aspect for a lot of people. And I think that's really what inspired MAHA. And I think that's what gave people the energy behind that movement is they want better for themselves and they want better for their kids.
Mm-hmm. And say just really briefly, like what happened at your college about how, if you want to just briefly summarize that.
About the cancer outbreak at Roanoke College. Sure, yeah. So I went to Roanoke College. I got my degree in public health. Recently, there was an investigation that discovered that there was a really, really high cancer incidence among graduates of Roanoke College, higher than the general population, which started this whole investigation into if there were environmental chemicals contaminating the dorms or the living spaces at the college. They did end up finding some really toxic dry cleaning chemicals in one of the dorms that I lived in for several years. So that's just sort of an example about how chemicals in our environment can cause real health issues for people. And so it is important that we have safety regulations in place, like in society in general and in colleges and in our homes, where we're not being unknowingly exposed to toxic chemicals because, like in my life and in the case of Roanoke College, where there was that kind of cancer outbreak, it can have real life impacts.
Yeah. Well, so speaking of getting exposed to chemicals against your will, you're 7 months pregnant now?
Yeah.
Yeah, and in the past month, you have been sprayed with Roundup twice.
Yeah.
So tell us about that. And first of all, I know Roundup is useful. I know people use it a lot, but it is dangerous stuff. So Roundup is also glyphosate. So
Glyphosate.
The two are...
Glyphosate.
Okay.
It's hard to say.
Okay. Anyway, it's the same thing. So you hear it referred to by both names. So tell us about how you got Roundup.
Yeah, sure. I'm laughing now, but I definitely wasn't laughing at the time. I was at the playground. I was at a public playground, actually here in Winchester.
At Winchester City Park.
Yes.
Out by the lake.
Yes, okay. With my toddler, who's 3.5, and we were just kind of enjoying lunch on a Monday at noon, and I started to kind of like get this weird taste in my mouth and kind of smell something weird for a few minutes, and I noticed there was a grounds worker spraying Roundup, which is glyphosate, kind of into the air while it was windy, and it was kind of like drifting over towards us. And
there were other moms and kids too.
We were not the only people at the playground. And I did end up emailing Parks and Rec, and they were very responsive and very nice.
Yeah, Ms. Roten was
she was
nice,
very helpful, and they sort of addressed that issue. But it was disturbing to me that I was unknowingly and against my will exposed to something, especially while I'm pregnant, because it has been documented that glyphosate can have negative outcomes when there's a high level of exposure during pregnancy.
Right. So what does Roundup do to people?
Okay, so this is like chemistry, biology stuff that's beyond my sort of scope of knowledge, but essentially how it works.
Why is it bad? Yeah.
How it works is it's an herbicide, so that means it's meant to kill plants and weeds when we're growing crops and in yards and stuff like that. And so it works by disrupting something called the shikimate pathway, and so that essentially kills the plant. And so the manufacturer of glyphosate argues that, humans don't have the shikimate pathway. And so because only plants have this and humans don't, it doesn't harm humans. However, the catch is that all of us have bacteria in our guts, and those bacteria actually comprise 70% of our immune system. And those bacteria in our guts do have a shikimate pathway. So when people eat glyphosate in food or are exposed to it occupationally or incidentally, it can actually disrupt our gut microbiome. And so that's why we do still see effects in people like respiratory irritation, skin irritation. Recently, a study came out that found that even the really, really small amounts that are found in food from like desiccating oats and wheat can actually cause different types of tumors too. And so it's banned in Mexico. It's banned in some other countries. I would love to see the United States held to the same stringency standards as other countries like Europe when it comes to pesticides. And I think that was something that Maha believed would happen.
But the opposite is happening.
Yeah, so the opposite is actually happening. I have friends that told me that Robert Kennedy Jr. was going to outright ban all pesticides, which is kind of funny because I'm not sure. I mean, I don't know if I'm right about this, but I don't think any country in the world has banned all pesticides. That's our farming system is set up to be reliant on at least some pesticides, but not only have not all pesticides been banned, but they are now talking about reintroducing pesticides that have previously been banned. For example, dicamba, I don't know if I'm saying that right, but it's a very volatile herbicide that can drift and destroy crops in places past where it was sprayed, and it had been banned, and now they're reintroducing it. And the most recent thing that has happened in regard to pesticides is this legislation passed basically protecting pesticide manufacturers from liability. Like they're getting sued by people that experience negative health effects from using that pesticide. And so that's really big because I think paraquat was the pesticide that they were focusing on there, and that's manufactured in China. And that's a pesticide that's banned in China. So, so Chinese people don't want to use it on their own crops, but they sell it to America. We allow it to be used, and now that company, I think it's called Syngenta, cannot be sued if Americans experience negative health effects from the use of that pesticide, which has been linked to Parkinson's disease, most notably.
And also notably, every Republican voted for this and every Democrat voted against it. Okay, so Republicans do not want you to be able to sue pesticide companies. Democrats do. The two parties are not the same. Okay, so all right, here are some of the ways that RFK Jr., Trump's new head of things, says big wins. We're gonna get rid of the artificial dyes in M&Ms. They haven't actually done it. They're just talking about it, and they're just asking the corporations to do it. They're not mandating anything. They're just simply saying, would you please switch these artificial dyes for natural dyes? They have asked McDonald's and other companies to use tallow on their French fries instead of seed oils. McDonald's, is not legally bound to do this. They've just simply asked them. And they have asked the Coca-Cola company to use cane sugar instead of high fructose corn syrup. Well, that's all very well, but I'm sorry, French fries are junk food, Coke is junk food, and candy is junk food. Asking a junk food company to make their junk food a little bit healthier is nothing compared to cutting SNAP where people can buy vegetables and real food, and ending the program that would allow farmers to sell directly to food banks and school lunch programs, So, like, while they're doing these surface dressing things to make junk food more, maybe slightly more healthy, they're doing things that are going to keep people from buying and eating vegetables and healthy food. Anna, I see you giving your daughter some of the most healthy and wonderful lunches. So, what are some, and a lot of people think, oh, to eat healthy, you've got to spend all this money, it's so expensive. So, what are some of your favorite, inexpensive, and easy to prepare healthy meals that you make for your kids?
Well, I'm going to backtrack for a second and say I am really happy that artificial dyes have been,
me too.
they're suggesting that they be banned, because, it's like when you send your kids to school, you don't have control over everything they eat at school. And I think they should be banned, and they're banned in Europe. So why aren't they banned here? And so I think that's a very small win. But like Helen was saying, it sort of pales in comparison to these bigger changes that the Trump administration has made in regards to public health, like voting to take healthcare away from 17 million people and voting to cut SNAP benefits, and really notably the farm to school food program grants. I think that's really important. So then I'll be able to answer your question about feeding kids healthy. And I'll start out by saying, is there an inexpensive way to feed kids healthy? And if you find out, let me know. My husband complains endlessly about how much I spend on groceries every month. And it's true that groceries are really expensive, and healthy groceries are expensive. And I think with the tariffs, we really see that stuff has gotten more expensive. And so it's harder to eat healthy when things cost more and when everything costs more, because then you have to factor that into your budget. Am I going to pay for gas? Am I going to pay for my daycare? Or am I going to buy, am I going to make this dinner that I want to make? But I think when it comes to feeding kids healthy, I think the best thing you can do is find ways to bring them closer to the source of their food. At the last house we lived at, we had some chickens. And so in the morning, I would go outside with my daughter and she would feed the chickens. She'd go gather eggs. She would stand there while we made the eggs together, and she would eat those eggs. And eggs are a very nutrient-dense food for kids. They have a lot of nutrients in them, like choline and good cholesterol for their growing brains. And so I'm not going to say eggs are cheap right now, but, I think as far as bang for your buck, eggs are a great way to get kids involved and, making their breakfast. And another thing I would suggest doing to bring kids closer to the source of their food is to bring them to the farmer's market. They love the farmer's market. Let them pick stuff out. Let them get a muffin. Let them look at all the pretty vegetables and pick out, what looks nice to them. Let them meet the farmers, let them meet your friends, let them buy food from the people that grew it, and then they're going to be more excited about eating it, and it tastes way better. Like, vegetables from the grocery store just don't compare to vegetables that grow, locally, that didn't travel hundreds or thousands of miles to get to you. And I could go to Walmart and buy a cucumber, and my daughter probably doesn't really want to eat it, but we walked over to Helen's garden the other day, and she picked one off the vine and just, ate it like an apple. And so that's one way to kind of get kids familiar with new textures and different foods and vegetables, is to just bring them closer to the source. Mm-hmm. And so it hurts my heart to see that that delicious farm fresh food that also supports our local economy and our local farmers, that some of those grants have been cut.
Yeah, right. Okay, so I'm backtracking now. Has RFK Jr. done anything that you do agree with?
Yeah, well, like I said, I do think artificial dyes need to get out of our food. I'm a tallow versus seed oil. I'm a tallow person. I like,
we've been drinking raw milk.
We've been on this. This is not new. Now. This is not trendy. I know this is a trendy thing for a lot of people, but we kind of been on the Maha thing, really. I mean, for a long time. But yeah, there's those little things that I like that they appointed Joel Salatino as part of the USDA. He's a really prominent regenerative farmer. So you would, but it's kind of just all ironic because
it's
you know
all
you
window
have
dressing,
well you
though.
have these people now in the administration, but then the actual laws that have been enacted and passed don't really like reflect the you know, we're not seeing the results that you would expect.
No,
So you know
because
there are things that RFK has done, and this one might be more controversial. I might get in trouble for saying this one, but I think, you know, maybe taking fluoride out of the water. I know I'm gonna make some dentists mad, but you know, a lot of people don't want to drink that. So you know, it's just sort of you can pick and choose what he's done that you like, but overall I think the negative has outweighed the positive in terms of like the big policies that affect people's health in this country.
yeah, because if you lose your SNAP and can't eat, it doesn't matter if there's cane sugar or high fructose corn sugar in your.
Right, exactly.
there's,
And like if
you
we're
know.
talking about school lunches, you know, I don't want red number 40 in my kids' school lunch, but I also want my kids to get school lunch.
Right. It's better to have. I mean, yeah, they're taking away like 90% and they're giving you 1%. You know, like yeah. So like they're cutting billions from the SNAP program that people survive on. So like it's more important that you eat something at all rather than eat the perfect just right thing with all the right ingredients.
And also, I feel like with the SNAP program, for a lot of people, that can be the difference between whether you're eating ramen noodles for dinner or you actually can afford to buy the ingredients to make a wholesome, balanced meal. You know, because like maybe you can afford ramen, but with SNAP, you can actually afford something healthy. And I think a lot of people do make those healthier choices and have a more diverse diet when they have more money allocated towards their grocery budget every month due to SNAP.
And they're also cutting back. Trump is calling this the greatest deregulation of the EPA ever. And I mean, the EPA is what keeps stuff out of our PFAS, which are forever chemicals. That is contaminating farmland. They're rolling back PFAS protection. They're laying off people who research this kind of stuff so that you can then make better decisions based on research. They're cutting Medicaid and health care. Who cares if there's cane sugar in your Coke if you're dead because you don't have health care? You know, it's like, anyway,
Yeah, those are the big scary points. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so if we are almost out of time, but if you were the Secretary of Health of this country, what would you do to, if you had RFK Jr.'s job, what would you be doing?
Wow,
You could just do anything you want.
That's such a big question, but so one thing we learned about when I was getting my bachelor's in public health at Roanoke College is something called social determinants of health. And social determinants of health are really important because there's really small decisions we can make on an individual basis every day, like whether we eat tallow or seed oils or whether we buy organic or not or things like that. And those a lot of times do come down to individual choices because we have the choice to make our own food decisions. But as far as, you know, you would think the Secretary of Health would try to do things to protect all people. And so I would really try to focus on the social determinants of health. One of the things I would do would probably be to implement the same pesticide stringency that Europe has, just to make sure, you know, our farmers and our farming communities are safe and the food we're eating is always safe and we don't have to worry about negative health effects from pesticides because, you know, other countries have banned these chemicals. And so it kind of makes you wonder, you know, if they're safe for us. You know, rather than cutting cancer and maternal health funding, I would probably want more funding going towards that because we are seeing such a high incidence of cancer in the United States, especially among young people. We also do have a relatively higher maternal mortality rate than other developed countries, and so I would want to see more versus less funding towards that kind of research. I would also want to increase farm to school lunch programs. I want to support our local farmers, especially those regenerative farms. And
one of the best things that the Obama administration did was allowing SNAP benefits to be used at farmers markets. That happened under him.
And there still are some places, like where I moved from Virginia recently, and our local farmers market had a grant where people could use their SNAP benefits at the farmers market, and they actually were doubled. So if you had a SNAP balance of $25 at the farmer's market, you were allowed $50, and half of that had to be used for fruits and vegetables. So that was a great way for people to be encouraged to use their EBT for healthy options. And I know they've talked about banning soda from being purchased with SNAP, but I think things like that grant that the Floyd Farmers Market in Virginia uses, where you give people double their SNAP balance and they get to use it towards fruits and vegetables, is a great use of those dollars.
And Medicaid. You probably wouldn't have survived without Medicaid, because that's what got you through all your melanoma.
Yeah, so
having Medicaid.
Yeah, I was a stay-at-home mom. I had a new baby. Like I said, I had just been diagnosed with a really scary cancer. I had to get surgery. I had to get lymph nodes removed. I had to get all this kind of testing, and Medicaid covered all of it. I didn't have a bill. I was able to go on with my life. I wasn't, I didn't go bankrupt from those surgeries.
And Republicans are cutting Medicaid.
Yeah, so that's really scary. I think it's really scary for a lot of people, especially people that have like existing health issues or had, those kind of serious things can really, they can set you back financially and cause bankruptcy and make it so people don't get the care that they need.
And also, like the school lunches in our country, it's similar to what they give at prisons. School should be where you are exposed to good, healthy food. It shouldn't be the other way around, like where you eat well at home and then you eat junk at school. Like, we need to have healthy school lunches.
There is a lot of...
And they're cutting that too.
Well, there's a lot of ultra-processed food in our school lunches, and a lot of, like big corporations like Coca-Cola and, companies like that, sell products to schools when it maybe shouldn't be processed food that they're buying. Like I said, again, it should be, we're getting food from farms, because a lot of other countries, like, they're serving fresh, whole foods, and it doesn't have to be fancy or some complicated dish, but as long as it's, a real whole food and it's fresh, I think that's a lot better.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, we're about out of time. Was there anything else you wanted to say?
Well, I feel like I've said a lot, but thank you for having me and letting me share my thoughts. And like I said, I love, the energy behind MAHA. I think like it needed to happen, and there's a reason it happened, and maybe people should pay more attention to the demands that these people have and have been having in their concerns. And I think their concerns haven't been heard. And so I think that's why this movement sort of like got so much energy and was in a way successful. But then, yeah, like you've pointed out, what we're seeing is not what they really, really wanted.
No. And also RFK Jr., his health department is putting out fake studies where they're just making up evidence and they're citing sources that don't exist. They're referring to articles and studies that literally don't exist. And the problem with RFK Jr. is that he's a lawyer. And what a scientist does is a scientist asks a question and then he performs experiments to find out what the answer to that question is, and goes where the evidence leads. RFK Jr. was a lawyer his whole career, and what a lawyer does is they come up with a theory or an answer, and then they look for evidence to back up that answer. And that's pretty much what he's doing with a lot of his wacky ideas. But anyway, all right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And this is the Franklin County Democratic Party. Please look us up at FranklinCountyTennesseeDemocraticParty.com.